the show. It means a lot to us. And allow me to introduce our panelists, starting with executive producer, supervising director Dave Filoni. Executive producer Simon Kinberg. The voice of Kanan, Freddie Prinze Jr. The voice of Hera, Vanessa Marshall. The voice of Ezra, Taylor Gray. The voice of Sabine, Tia Sircar. And finally, the voice of Zeb, Steve Bloom. And so you guys, like I said, we're going to do this just old school honor system style. You raise your hands, I'll pick you, and hopefully we'll get to everybody, okay?
I can definitely tell the voices with all of you. Awesome. So who is going to be voicing Darth Vader this season?
Me. Simon, you good. Yeah, absolutely.
The same person that voiced Darth Vader in the original movies. James Earl Jones. One of the most, I would say, one of many surreal things in making this show, maybe the actually most surreal thing, is Dave sent me, when he first worked with James on the dialogue, recorded it, he sent me like voice recordings, clips essentially, of the dailies, of hearing all of the different takes, and hearing James Earl Jones, untreated, obviously, playing the part of lines that Dave and I essentially had written together, was pretty insane. When you grow up, you think, like, I'm going to write lines for Darth Vader, but I'm not actually going to get Darth Vader to say them out loud. And that was listening to Darth Vader say them out loud, so that's who's going to play Darth.
That's such an awesome answer.
Every appearance this season of Vader?
Yeah, so far. And you know, James is great. You're not really directors, but she'd sit and say, "No, David, I haven't done this in 10 years. Could you remind me?" I'm like, "No, you're doing it." Matt Wood and I just look at each other and kind of high five when he's not looking, and it's an awesome moment.
There were a couple moments in the takes though where he coughed or he corrected himself and started over.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden you realize there is a man playing Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Playing Darth Vader. It's sort of like being a child and having the helmet come off.
Yeah.
Why don't you guys let us in on those sessions?
Yeah, no, Mandalorians.
I mean, just to watch. Just to
Too dangerous.
They don't trust us.
I know.
Hi.
First of all, congratulations on the success of season 1. We're really excited about season 2. Going into season 2, are you feeling any added pressure to deliver to the fans, especially now that you're ramping it up, adding more characters in the Clone Wars?
I don't. No, I mean, I think maybe they do. The actors could speak to it. I mean, for me, this is like, this month is my 10th year at Lucasfilm, creating Star Wars Celebration. April 26th was the day I officially started working on Star Wars all those years ago. So it's just, for me, it's just fun. You know, the story gets bigger, the stakes get higher, it's as it should be. I feel a little bit we're moving into our kind of Empire Strikes Back era for our characters, where they're really challenged. As the first year is kind of a new hope, and I mean, all their characters are going through trials of different kinds.
I think also there's an automatic pressure when you do anything that has the word Star Wars in the title. So I don't know that there's sort of increased or decreased amounts of pressure. I think you always feel a responsibility. It's like writing books of the Bible. You know, you're adding the books to the Newer Old Testament. So you know, once you start, you know, the pressure is going to be that throughout.
He stole my answer.
Hi. So I would like for you to talk about that process and how's that important for you. And I also would like to know what are your thoughts about the future of the Star Wars world? That now that George Lucas retired and let new people in charge.
Sure. Well, we should go. Well, the first question, introducing kids to a new Star Wars or to Star Wars for the first time. I have 2 boys myself who are actually here. We're 5 and 9 years old, and grew up on Clone Wars as much as they grew up on the movies, actually. And I see their friends are experiencing Star Wars for the first time through Rebels. And for us, knowing the responsibility of that, one of the things that was really important from the beginning was to give them the experience that we had as kids, which was the really first point of entry being the original films. And so we wanted the tone, the feel, the texture of those movies to be really present in the show. And I think, one of the things that's been really gratifying about the response to the show is that, hardcore fans and even more casual fans, but who appreciate the original movies, see the connection tonally, emotionally, thematically between what we're doing and what George did from the beginning. And I think the future of the Star Wars movies, I'm involved in some of the films in different capacities, and I think that same approach of wanting to have the ethos of the original films is what they're doing in all the different aspects, whether it's video games or the movies, the standalone movies, what we're doing. And I think because of that, they feel all of a piece and all of a sort of a singular voice and vision, even though there's different filmmakers involved with each. And I think the fans will feel similarly about the films and the other media the way they feel so far about Rebels.
Yeah, and I think the future, like I said, is great. And if there's any pressure I do feel, it's now that there's so many incredible things in play. I think you always have characters in mind that you'd like to see interface. We throw names around the room. I mean, everybody in the writer's room is a fan. So everybody has certain characters that they would love to see. And sometimes you're never sure like how serious people are or not, when they bring people up. And you have to be careful with that, because if you're joking and say, how about we bring Porkins in? That'd be great. And then all of a sudden something happens, you're like, hey, Porkins would fit for that. And then the person's face is suddenly like serious, and they're like, no, I was joking. And I'll seize on that idea with my sense of humor and be like, oh no. Now he's in, but he's not. So, yeah, no, and sometimes it only gets so far, but you never know. I'm not sure what makes us decide a particular character's coming in or out. Sometimes, we'll get to talking when we're in the script phase, and we'll have, honestly, recently, a recent problem we have is there are so many cool things happening in the script. I was like, Simon, I only have 21 minutes and 30 seconds. This would be awesome as like a 90-minute movie. I have 21 minutes, and he's like, yeah, I know, I've been writing it, it's hard to get in there. So sometimes we'll try to spread stuff out then. We work on this up until the last minute possible. Nothing is ever set in stone. Everything is changeable. It's not like we just get the script, that's the blueprint, we follow it. We deconstruct it along the way, try to get it as right as we can. And luckily I work with guys like Simon, Greg, Henry Gilroy, and they're really good at moving through that as I'm trying to direct it and get the best story we can, changing sometimes a lot, sometimes little.
And we get a lot of time too, which I don't really, almost more than features for me, we get a lot of brainstorming time. So we get a lot of blue sky meetings. What should this season be? And we really spend probably months on that. We're doing it while we're also writing episodes for the previous season, but there's a lot of time to dream and to play around. Yeah.
Hi, Thomas from Star Wars in the Classroom. And they had to go real. She is. We provide resources for teaching Star Wars K-12. And Star Wars Rebels provides rich ground for doing so. So my question for you guys is, what do you think, this is anybody on the panel, what do you think are the big lessons that are being taught through these stories?
I mean, Star Wars shows you that the good guys don't always win, right?
Right.
Star Wars teaches about patience, Star Wars teaches about discipline, Star Wars teaches about a lot of social issues that most sci-fi can't really touch on, outside of racism, right? That's one that's in every sci-fi movie. But they deal with a lot of cultural things, a lot of government issues. In our show alone, we deal with those things. And the movies can go in much more deeper in some instances. But I would say it teaches a lot more about real life than a lot of the stuff out there. You know what I mean? Most stuff you see, you know the good guy is, you know the bad guy is, and you know who's going to win and who's going to lose. And Star Wars doesn't give that to you. That's I think why it was always so powerful and not only my mind, but most people's, is because you genuinely relate to it. It's not just, I wish I was Han Solo. You relate to Han Solo, right? You wish you were Superman, or you're a kid if you like DC, or you wished you were Spider-Man if you like Marvel. But you didn't really relate. Well, you can relate to Peter, I guess, but so that's not a good example. But you know what I'm trying to say. Everybody relates to Peter. He's a pretty kid with problems. So, you know, to me, Star Wars was always kind of, you know, this is the real world, and you can work as hard as you possibly can and do your best and still fail. And it's what does a Jedi do once they fail, and that's sort of what shapes us as a man, shapes us as a woman, as a human, whatever. As a Wookiee, whatever.
I'm moved by the hope that is present in the show. I think it's a great thing for kids to latch onto, especially these days. And I love the idea of the spark of a rebellion, that it takes an initial idea and then it's followed through with action. As Freddie said, you don't always succeed, but at least you can have hope. I love that we seem to be giving that message to the younger generation, and also encouraging them to follow through on their ideas. And that it's worth it to get a group together and not just talk about it, but actually take action and do it and walk the walk. So I think it's a great metaphor.
I love that it addresses the possibility of transformation also. No matter what's happened to you in your life, there's always possibility of changing and growing and developing into something better, and seeing a possible future no matter what the odds. And that's really encouraging to me. I'm a dad too, and so I love to instill that in my kids. No matter what's happening to you, you can always change that.
The answer is, I don't know. I mean, I do know, so that's a blatant lie, but I think the fun part about any trailer, right, is once you see it, there are the things that are designed to hit you immediately, like the Rex moment, having Hondo in there, the obvious things you see, and then, but as you watch a trailer over and over again, if they're designed well, they have layers, and each time you watch it, you get a little more out of it, a little more out of it. So those are all the great things that become questions and debated. I just had a kid behind stage asking me, like, who are those other clones? Are those clones with Rex? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. And, you know, but that's what I want you to be asking, because it keeps you engaged and it keeps you hoping, and it gives you something to ask me when at these conventions. So, you know, eventually when it gets answered, it's hopefully awesome and what you want. Or then, no one ever asks me after it's out, right? That's the funny thing. It's always a forward thing. I always think we'll get to, like, then they'll ask me all about details season 1. Nope, everybody's on to season 2, which is cool. I mean, because that means we've answered all your questions, I guess, about the previous season.
Good afternoon, Katie Cullen with AfterBuzz TV. To touch on the previous season, thank you for that segue. One of the big questions was, what happened to Ezra's parents? We haven't seen them. Will we be covering that in any capacity in the upcoming season? And, given what happened at the panel, will we hear anything about Sabine's family?
What's wrong, Sabine?
I didn't really mean to, I think I misspoke. Because I didn't mean anyone anywhere, because that, sorry.
What do you think, Tia? That is fun.
I'm not the worst person to ask about what's happening with Sabine's story. I don't know anything. I find out when we get the script before, like, a couple days before the episode records.
We will be addressing, you know, definitely Ezra's parents to some degree. We think it's important. It's, you know, because it came up, we all noticed that kids focus in on that. And you know, it's something to be responsible with answering that question. And, you know, now that he has this other family, what happened to his mom and dad? And we've had them, you know, visually in the show, you know what they look like. So that will be a part of the story. And I think the nice thing about season 2 is you get a broader look at all the characters. Now that you know who they are to some level, it's not just Sabine maybe and what her background is, but also Hera and Zeb, Ezra, Kanan. You know, it's a lot of people wanted that. You even eventually get more of a depth backstory on Chopper and where Chopper is from. So you kind of get it all this year. It's fun.
Do we have to?
Of course.
Alright, my name is Josh from KBVB TV and Potapie Productions, and my question actually is for Steve, because one, my best friend for 20 years, his name's Zeb.
Yeah,
he is. So my question is we saw a little bit in season 1 of Zeb, kind of had a backstory. Are we going to go in more into it about his species and what his story is and why he hates the Empire as much as he does?
It could absolutely happen.
That's the answer like Dave.
Yeah,
that was very good.
She's my mentor. I'm his Padawan.
We don't want get fired.
No, then Dave, is there more of a backstory for Zeb? I'll ask Dave this.
Simon, what do you think?
It'd be fascinating to explore.
Oh my God.
We're all trained by Dave. You can find us.
No, I can't.
Me too.
I'm so evil.
That's Lord.
We go deeper into all the characters' backstory in the second season. Like Dave said, the first season's about introducing them in many ways, and also about integrating a new member into the family with Ezra. And the second season, we can go a little deeper into their backstories and into their interpersonal relationships too.
We got a lot more time season 2 also. We don't have to, we had a shorter season 1, so we get more time to explore everybody in season 2 as well.
I feel like in season 1 there was a lot more about like the familial dynamics and how like establishing who is what within this little ragtag, crew. And I feel like in season 2 so far we've really gotten to explore like certain pairings that you haven't seen yet will within the crew happen and go on like really interesting adventures. I can say that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's all fun. That's all
and
great.
It's really fun because you're starting to see sort of each person's personalities as an individual kind of coming to light, and then you do get to find out more stuff about some of us, all of us, some of us.
Hello everyone. Kevin Cleveland from thegigtable.com. First, just want to say thank you for having this panel on my birthday. It's a great birthday present. This question is actually for Freddie. Coming from being an actor in front of the camera to doing a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff like with the WWE, and now still being a bit behind the camera, but also in front of the camera with at least the voice role. How does that feel to get kind of back to what you were doing before a little bit more?
That's a long answer. The short one might sound kind of generic, but I honestly have more fun doing this than any acting job on camera that I ever did. We get to basically do a radio show every week, and we're all in the room together. There's no hair and makeup. There's no wardrobe people fixing my collar because it moved 1/4 of an inch. It's a lot easier if you're a father of 2 to work once a week in the Valley for 6 hours than to go to Australia for 6 months and not see your family. So it's not a transition for me at all. I wanted to be a father more than an actor. So once my daughter was born, I already kind of had one foot out the door already. Vanessa, are you crying behind my back? Oh, okay. I thought Vanessa was shedding tears. Tia's shedding tears now.
I can vouch. He's the best dad in the world. This guy is literally dad #1. He is indeed.
Top 10. But yeah, man. So it wasn't a transition. This is what I did when I was 8 years old, and now I get to do it, and it looks way cooler because they animated it. So yeah, it wasn't a transition. I really love it.
It helps that you're really good at it too.
Oh, well, thank you.
There's that.
Thanks.
Hi guys.
Kids, so there's a lot of Kanans and Zebs in my house. We've got a couple of Jason Isaac Inquisitors in there. Yeah, we got a lot. We got a lot. They're more for my kids than for me. I'm not, Rick Moranis in a room by myself. I'll play with the kids and stuff like that. So.
I spent a whole night putting together every Lego set that they sent me. So I have the Ghost. I have each one of our characters. I think.
Don't you have the Nerf lightsaber too?
I have the lightsaber. I have every
Your
single
lightsaber with
that lightsaber. I have Vader's lightsaber, I believe. Red.
We all got really awesome stormtrooper helmets with Sabine's graffiti on it, which is awesome. And Vanessa and I got presented with Sabine helmets made by the Mandalorian mercs. And it was
And the airbrush gun too.
Oh, and the gun, and a plaque. It was lovely.
It was really
So
cool.
I just need the outfit now.
I don't have nearly enough.
We can make that happen.
I don't have nearly enough toys yet. I'm going shopping right after this.
I have all of them.
I think so.
Hey guys, Christian Karloff from AMC Jedi Council, let you most know. So the question I have for you guys, Dave and Simon, is because we know the time period that this takes place in between 4 or 5 years before New Hope. How many seasons do you guys think it's going to take you to tell the story up to where we need to go, where we all know it goes, and second part for that question is, let's say a particular movie, spin-off movie, takes place in that timeline. Say Rogue One, maybe not. In that timeline, how much information would you guys be able to get to give the actors some backstory that they might need leading up to that period?
Well, I mean, as we were saying, all of the creatives kind of collaborate. We know what each other are doing. So the purpose of that is so that we're always aware of continuity in the different stories. So if there was a situation where that was happening, then we would absolutely know in detail what was going on, and then I can inform my actors as necessary, or our writers, you know. But that's kind of the beauty of the new story group scenario, is it all interconnected, and that's the purpose for it, to keep the stories all on track, depending on where people are. The story group is the one that comes in and says, I like that idea, but that's going to be happening somewhere over here. So we're going to have that idea over here, this over here. As far as how many seasons we could go, I'm not exactly sure. I never know. I got asked that question every year on Clone Wars, and I thought it was a 2-year job, in all honesty, when I started it. That was the most animated series that I'd worked on, be about 2 years. So I thought I'd move to Bay Area for 2 years and move back to LA. I've been there 10 years. So I never know. I mean, I think it's kind of as long as there's a demand for it. I think I do have a little more of an arc in mind for Rebels SEU. We talk about kind of that bigger picture because we are running up to A New Hope. That is a flagpole that we know. So that's kind of a question on how we're going to deal with that incident in the galaxy should our timeline reach that.
Kiri and Lobos, I mean, those are the names. Should be named Dave.
Yes.
You know, one of the things we did say consciously was that there was a biblical sense to the naming and to this sort of seriousness of purpose of the original movies. And you know, there's just the cloaks themselves have a religious feel to them. So that was, I don't know that, at least for me, it was conscious that each one was, and that is, frankly, is news to me that each one is from the Bible. But it was, we were aware that there were elements of that in the original films that we were trying to connect to.
Is Chopper Old Testament or New He's the
I definitely get the idea of Luke's name, Luke Skywalker, and I like to point out when I get in the room with the writers that, you know, the names in Star Wars are very purposeful, but when you get into the expanding universe, they become often very odd and contain a lot of X, Y's, and Z's, and, you know, hyphens, and that's all fine. But when you're in a medium like we are, you know, Han Solo, okay, guy's pretty much by himself, right? And that's kind of the genius of George, is that he would disguise this stuff. I didn't think about that when I was a kid. You don't know the derivations of these names, but names have a purpose. You know, if you know someone's full name in folklore, then you have power over them, right? Because if you can know someone's name, it gives you an understanding of who they are, you know? So, you know, I joke, I've got a guy in the crew named Spotswood, and I'm like, your family, at some point, probably had a particular task that involved, you know, finding the firewood or searching, hunting for something, because that's where names come from. They don't just, you know, to make up a name that is odd, you know, just for the sake of it sounding like a space world name isn't really what Star Wars does. So I think that having these names, you know, Hera, a very purposeful name for the type of character that she is. You know, Chopper, he's a disruptive little character that causes problems. He chops things up. I mean, it's blatant, but when the characters work, when you like the characters, it doesn't matter. You just accept them. And so I think that's what we do. We try to create a lot of these names. And you know, like with Ezra was definitely a connection to the fact that I liked the name Luke, and it was a real kid's name. And we both actually know a kid named Ezra in our lives. And I'm like, that sounds like Star Wars to me. And so I'm like, yeah, I agree. And that was basically it.
We actually expand Rebels in that sense. Like, you guys are expanding to books and comic books and hopefully video games someday. So how do you guys work together with the other branches of the story group?
The comic was easy because Greg wrote it.
Yeah.
The comic was a no-brainer. Greg writes comics, and Greg wasn't working on season 2 with us, So, you know, the opportunity came up to have a comic book written, and it's like, well, let's have Greg Weisman do it because he's already worked with us. So what happens is he writes the treatment, and Simon and I see it, and we're able to make notes directly on it. I mean, which I don't know, I think maybe it's rare in the crossover universe from films and television to comics and other medium, but we always get a chance to look at everything that comes by.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it. Working in other, I guess, franchises, there's not the same kind of integration. So you don't get the, if you are the, you know, sort of core group that created one branch, you don't necessarily even get access to the other branches until they come out as a book, and maybe you get a free book. But you certainly are not involved in the process. And this is, it's kind of an amazingly small unit for the amount of stuff they generate. That story group that we're talking about is like 4, 5, 6 people, maybe deep, and they got, you know, huge, biggest movies in the world that they're also focused on, while being focused on a comic book spin-off of their animated show. So there's just, everybody works really hard, everybody loves it, and we are all constantly talking. And there are moments on the feature side where, you know, Dave and me and different writers from different movies are all in the room together, working on, you know, one of their films. And then sometimes we bring some of those guys in when we're doing development of the show. And it really feels like, it's kind of like what I imagine like Facebook or Google or these sort of campuses to be like. It does have this almost university campus vibe to it.
It was the same as y'all. We hadn't seen it yet.
I couldn't believe I was able to stand and sit down again. I couldn't move after I was paralyzed.
Worried about you.
We had to make sure there was a medic backstage because we were worried about the next.
But just the sensory overload too, from being on the stage and then getting the energy from the audience at the same time, and all the emotions that are going on with all of us because we're fans too. It was intense. It was really, really intense.
I want to, every episode of Rebels, I want to watch it with that sound.
I know.
That's crazy. Man, we were on the stage, it was like rumbling when it was amazing. Also, to get to hear people's reaction to Rex was like, yeah. And Hondo, goosebumps, and Hondo. That's
The Hondo love was great.
Yeah.
I think for me, that was the part that is particularly striking. I mean, having been here and created those characters, and then to all this time later have a reaction like that. I mean, when I got here, Rex wasn't really a thing at all. He wasn't a character. Neither was Hondo, neither was Ahsoka. We had to, like, you know, plant them and help them grow over the years. And I told Ash in the beginning, you know, Ahsoka, Anakin having a Padawan, look out. You're gonna get, you know, the brunt of this. And she hung in there, and I think really won fans over. So it was kind of an amazingly, you know, moving experience for me to have a character like Captain Rex, a clone, cheered at such a volume. And I think that shows you the real powerful thing about Star Wars and the challenge that we all have as well. I grew up with the original trilogy and I love it. The biggest thing I learned from George over the years is create new characters, create new ground, keep it moving forward. I love the past, I'm incredibly nostalgic for it. But the best work we did on Clone Wars was always the new stuff we did that challenged us as writers to make it Star Wars and a part of the universe. And I think that, you know, now my hope is that, you know, in another decade, you know, I'll still be this, and, you know, I don't know which of you will still be alive. Whoever it is that's crawling on, whoever it is that makes it into the next thing, bravo, and whoever doesn't make it, you know, well, I can't tell you. If I said a name, you'd be like, oh, that person survived. So I got myself there. But that was a great moment.
I'll wash your car every day, dude.
Thanks, Steve. I designed this stuff. I sketched it on a piece of paper one day, knowing that, like, Ventress will walk in the room. I drew that outfit on a piece of paper one day, and there it happens. You know, Bo-Katan's Mandalorian helmet, I drew on a Southwest napkin. You know, and then that becomes a part of Star Wars. It never, ever gets old. I was outside the convention and Zeb walked up to me. I mean, Hera walks up to you. It's what it's all about, and the amount of work that everybody does to make those costumes is, I mean, I just love it. I super appreciate it.
My favorite one was last year at Comic-Con. There was a cosplay Dave Filoni.
Yes!
I wish I could project from my phone up to the wall, because it was a guy with that hat and black shirt, and Dave doesn't want to believe it was him, but I think it was him.
You have my wife obsessed with this.
Yeah, I tried to track him down.
And
I saw that guy over there with the hat, and I thought maybe we'd found him again, but that's not
there's now people that have this shirt and a hat. I think you're all crazy. This is something you guys see. I appreciate it. It means we should hang out more, maybe. But
I'm working on my Dave Filoni cosplay. The hair going, the shirt, halfway there. Yeah.
One of the bold things about the show when we started it was, I think the instinct, the easiest instinct would be if you were creating a new show and it's the first thing from the new Lucasfilm, essentially. You would lean on the legacy characters. You would make an animated show based on the brand names that everybody knows. And we did the opposite. All these guys up here obviously are completely original characters, and that was a bold thing to do. And it was something that wasn't, immediately clicked and made sense for all the powers that be. And it was an extra responsibility, obligation to create characters that were as compelling as the greatest characters of all time, and that's who they're competing with. And so to come here and see the kind of energy and affection that people have for these characters that didn't exist 2 years ago, in the world that didn't exist on screen a year plus ago, is pretty incredible. Like Dave said, the amount of time someone stitches together a costume based on a character that literally did not exist out of someone's imagination a year and a half, 2 years ago, is surreal and very gratifying.
Hello, you guys. Over here. Freddie.
All I hear are speakers.
That's Dave.
Yeah. Full-time podcaster, part-time Filoni cosplay. Anyway, my question, Dave sent in with Phantom Awakens Radio. Now, Dave, not to be confused with those other guys that did that other radio. But anyway, my question for Dave and Simon, can you two particularly speak on the process of how everything changed around? Dave, I know you worked with George for so long, and that was, I think, a shock to everybody. So I'm particularly interested to hear what you have to say. And Simon, on the level of the outline George left behind, all the his notes and everything, how much of those are used? I think I remember hearing you saying something about it depends from movie to movie, that kind of thing. So if you two could just speak on that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, from, I forget what year, but it might have been the second year I was at Lucasfilm, and I would spend a lot of time with George in editorial, and he would be teaching me the way that he cut Star Wars. That has so much to do with the way the films feel, the way the footage is cut together and moved around. And he used to tell me all the time, he's like, I'm teaching this stuff so that when I'm gone, it will still carry on the way I want it to. And I'm like, I'm gonna be here longer than you. That's fascinating, And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna retire one day. And I'm like, you're gonna retire. Well, you can retire from giving me notes today because I have lots to do. But it was a great master-apprentice relationship. I heard about this faraway world where he described being retired. I just didn't really believe it until he sold the entire company.
Oh, yeah.
I had to believe it, but I've taken that very seriously. I feel a great deal of responsibility to George as someone I worked with for a long time to constantly inform Simon and the rest of Story Team. Yes, I understand why you would think you want to do that, but in my experience, I thought that too, but then I would do it this way. And I try to hold the line on a lot of that stuff. In a lot of ways, though, the rest of it, we all realize no one is ever going to replace George. It's not going to happen. So what I think is amazing about the group of people we have working on Story is that it is a collective group of people that love Star Wars. And actually, if you get to talk to them, they all love different aspects of it. And my feeling from my perspective working here so long is that each person brings their own aspect and love of Star Wars to the story. And together, just maybe we can combine to make something like some kind of Star Wars Voltron, ready?
I was about to say Voltron.
Lions are robots. Maybe that way we are coming close to equaling the genius George had, which I hold very high esteem, obviously. And I think that's the best way to work. I think that we're aware of the challenge. We take the responsibility seriously. And my workflow is very similar to the way it was before. It's just now I've got, instead of one person, to go to for the commandments, I talk to a group of people, and together we come up with the answer. And then, the nice thing is, when I say I think it would be this, usually Simon, Kiri, we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
So we know for sure.
Commandments by committee.
Commandments by committee, yeah, I think so.